Hey friends, welcome back to Embrace the Question. Steve here, and we are doing our Bible Study with Me series. I hope that you've been following along. We are in Genesis chapter 12. We finally made it to Abraham, one of the greatest stories, period. One of the greatest stories, definitely, in all of Scripture, very deep, and we are going to take a really close look at it today. Starting at least with Genesis 12. This story lasts a while. Abraham is known as the father of our faith, and we are going to begin to see why immediately. So if you are new, I invite you to go on this journey with us and subscribe if you haven't so that you can keep up. Otherwise, I hope that you will enjoy this video. All right, this particular story, this chapter is really divisible into two pieces. One is the calling of Abraham, and then we immediately find ourselves in a story about one of his early, not exploits, but definitely an adventure. Let's call it that. Genesis chapter 12. Now, the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. I am in the King James. I'm going to switch over to the ESV, and I want to remind you that last week we ended. Last week was Genesis 11, obviously, the Tower of Babel, but we ended that chapter with the introduction to Terah, the father of Abram. And the question came up, was it possible, perhaps, that Terah was called to go into a land that God would show him? And he got towards the land of Canaan, but he didn't make it. He came to Haran and settled there. So that's where we find Abram at the start here of chapter 12. He's in Haran. Terah has died. So now God is speaking directly to Abram, who is the patriarch, and says, Get up and go. Get up and go to a land that I am going to show you. That's the start of everything, isn't it? I'm giving you an instruction, Abram, and I'm going to show you, not now, but later, where you are going. Already there is a faith element, right? And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. These are my highlights. This is all part of eSword. You can go in, you can highlight. If I had a complaint about eSword, it would be that the highlights do not carry over from translation to translation. But really they can't, because each translation is worded differently. It's just not smart enough to know which segments to highlight from one to the next. But in this one, you can see I read in this one a lot, the ESV, so I have made some highlights here. So that you will be a blessing. I'm going to bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. I find it fascinating that God is out to bless the earth. He's out to bless all people. And he wants to do it through a person, Abram. I'm going to bless those who bless you, Abram. I'm going to bless those who bless you. That is a wide statement. If as many friends as you can make, Abram, all who call you friend will be blessed. But bigger than that, I'm going to make your name great. I'm going to make your name great. I'm going to make it to where people know who you are. Okay, if you're ever wondering whether or not God has the ability to make your name known, this is your scripture. If he wants to make you famous, if he wants to extend your reach, it is nothing for him to do that. You're going to be a blessing. I'm going to bless those who bless you, Him who dishonors you, I will curse. Let's take a look at this word for curse real quick. Curse, it's a word called arar. Now you're going to notice the definition here of curse is to bitterly curse, which is a horrible definition. That's actually, according to the rules of logic, that's an illegal definition to use a word in its own definition. So let's take a look at a slightly different Hebrew word, which is cursed right here. Kalal, to causatively make light of, or to make small, to afflict, to slight, to make vile, right? Okay, so we have the idea. This is a better definition. It's a different tense, but you'll find it in words like abate. Abate, when the waters abated, they went away, they receded. That is cursed. Also, later we're going to have the story of Sarah and Hagar, and Abram goes into Hagar has a son, and Sarah curses or despises Hagar. It's also a reference to the phrase to make lighter, as in a yoke or a burden that you carry. So that is this word curse. All the families of the earth shall be blessed in verse 3. If we don't understand that the Lord is wanting to do this from the get-go, then we lose the entire point of the priesthood, of later the purpose of the body of Christ on the earth. Why Jesus came? So that you could have life and life abundant, so that he could bless all the families of the earth, right? That Jesus had to come through this lineage of Abram. Verse 4. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Now, most people are winding things up around 75 years old. Their big activities often are watching beautiful leaves or traveling around on a golf course. Abram was just getting started at 75. Okay? Imagine that. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. A couple of things to mark here. Abram was traveling with a fairly large entourage. He had a lot of people in his house. And we are going to find out as we go just how many people that might have been. Right now, from this text, all we know is he acquired quite a few people there in Haran, people that wanted to work for him. And that is now a caravan moving through the desert. They're coming to the land of Canaan. Canaan is the grandson of Noah. Cursed be Canaan, the son of Ham. What was that about again? Well, Canaan was the one that we can only surmise what his offense was. Not Canaan, but Ham, the son of Noah, probably the disfavored son. He made fun of, had some improper behavior toward his father, and as a result, Noah pronounced, "Cursed be Canaan," the grandson of Ham. Not cursed be Ham, but cursed be Canaan. And involved in that curse is you will serve your brothers. What that means to me is even though you have a land, it will not remain yours. It won't be yours for long. Part of the curse of servitude is you don't get to own anything. All right? And they're coming to this land of Canaan. Abram is the one who will eventually take possession. Abram passed through the land, to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. Now, when you see that, the oak of Moreh, depending on whether or not you're reading with me or reading along in your Bible, if we switch over here to King James Version, verse 6, it reads differently. Unto the plain of Moreh. The plain of Moreh, or the oak of Moreh. Which is it? What is it? Well, according to what I have read and studied, I've never been there, but according to what I have studied, this is a plain with a grove of oaks. So they're not both quite correct. They needed to expound a little. There is a plain at Moreh with an oak grove. That was perhaps the best definition I found. And at the time, Canaanites were in the land, so the grandsons of Noah were there, trying to make a living. Verse 7, Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, To your offspring I will give this land. So Abram, as a result, builds there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. So the Lord appeared to Abram. Often we wonder, how did God speak to Abram? How did Abram start this faith journey? At some point, Abram heard one voice louder than all the other voices. And you wonder, was this the only voice he heard? Was this the first voice he heard, the voice of God? When God appeared to him, how did he do it? Bodily form? Was it a ghostly image? Was this more of a figurative saying? When God appears to you, is it just a new way of seeing sometimes? This was enough for Abram, though. In verse 8, From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, and there he built an altar unto the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negeb. So he's still on a journey looking for a place that God has promised to show him. He has built at this point 2 altars. When God appears to you and you are hearing his voice clearly, the natural response is worship. And Abram, we don't know if he was instructed to build altars, but what he did was build altars. He worshiped. That is about as good a template, a formula for success as you can get, right? When you finally hear the voice of God in your life, the response should be worship. And we learn that fairly quickly and clearly from Abram, who, by the way, is only Abram at this point. He's not Abraham. That change is coming. That's the first part. That's more of our introductory half of the chapter. Now we get into something which I consider more fun, which are the actual stories involved. This one is interesting. It involves Sarai. And it starts with verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. Let's stop. Egypt seems to always make an appearance, doesn't it? It made an appearance for Abram. Because of famine, Abram goes to Egypt. It will make the same exact difference to the sons of Jacob. Joseph, remember, goes to Egypt, becomes famous. But why? Because there was a famine in the land of Canaan. It's not always famine, but early on, famine was one of the leading causes for people, followers of Yahweh, to move into this nation of Egypt. We do learn that Egypt represents, or comes to represent, sin, bondage to the flesh, personified by Israel, the Israelites who become enslaved to the Egyptians for 400 years plus. And then we find that Jesus also is drawn to Egypt as a boy. He's not drawn, but his parents are. They're fleeing Herod. So Egypt is always playing a part in our lives. Always plays a part. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like for us? Well, Egypt is that bondage that we're talking about, that we deal with. And there's always that connection with Egypt. Either we're in it or we've escaped it. One of those two. So it was with Abram. He's heading towards Egypt. Now, Abraham is known as the father of our faith. Faith is synonymous with Abram. How does this story start here and exemplify faith? Well, it seems that things happen for all of us, and we don't know whether to go or to stay. We don't know whether we should stay here and tough it out and depend on God for everything. Surely Abram asked himself that question. And maybe he asked God that question. And maybe God said, you should go into Egypt. Or maybe God said nothing. And Abram said, well, we can stay here and stay hungry, or we can go into Egypt and see if they have any food. So this faith walk thing seems to affect everybody. And it's going to hit him again here in just a few verses. But why is Egypt the one that always seems to have the answer? Doesn't famine hit Egypt? Well, surely it does. Egypt was fertile when nobody else was fertile because there's this massive river called the Nile. It creates a large area of fertility right down the center of Egypt. So also, if Egypt comes on hard times, it's because the Nile overflows and destroys the crops. But that's not a common occurrence. Usually, Egypt is known for plenty. Plenty as far as the flesh is concerned. They have food in Egypt. We do know from the story of Jacob or the story of Joseph that Egypt too would experience famine. That Egypt is typically where we're fleeing to whenever we are faced with faith choices. And that is probably a Bible study for somebody out there. Why do we go to Egypt? Well, Abram did. When he was about to enter Egypt, verse 11, he said to Sarai, his wife, again, her name was not yet Sarah, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, then they will kill me. But they will let you live. Again, we've got a faith crisis for Abram. He's been around here for 3 verses and he's already had 2 faith crises. Do I stay here and starve? Do I go to Egypt and hope to get food? If I go to Egypt, what do I do with Sarai? Because she's a looker, and I don't want to be killed because they want my wife. So let's make up a story. Wasn't a complete lie either, because Sarai was a half-sister. So he's going to tell half-truths. Again, it's a Bible study. It's what we do. We make up half-truths sometimes to get us by. Say, you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Remember, he's 75. I think she is 65. Isn't she 10 years his younger? So 65-year-old woman catching everybody's eye, she must have been something to behold. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Abram had this figured out from the beginning. He knew this was going to happen. Either Sarah was that good looking, or all of the women in Egypt were absolutely, let's just say they needed help. Okay? They needed help, perhaps. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. Pharaoh did. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. Wow. So Abram's doing okay because of this decision. He comes in with his entourage again. He needs food. That's really all he's looking for, is, a place to settle for a while until the famine breaks. And all of a sudden, we've got this thing going on with Sarai and Pharaoh, and Abram's making out like a bandit because of it. He's got all these sheep, oxen, donkeys, servants. His entourage is getting much, much bigger. Okay? But the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And again, we don't know what the plagues were, but we've got this thing with the faith hero, in this case Abram, the land that doesn't belong to him, Egypt, and plagues with Pharaoh. It's the same cast that we have whenever we find ourselves in the Egyptian captivity here in a few hundred years. Same cast of characters: Pharaoh, Egypt, plagues. So we're repeating history. We're starting a precedent. Let's say that. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go, along with all your servants and donkeys and camels and sheep and oxen and everything else I've given you. Just take it, be gone." This Pharaoh was a little bit wiser than the pharaohs to come, wouldn't you say? And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. To me, that is quite the story. I love that, but I love it for the irony that exists in it between this man who is supposed to define faith, and he's getting by on lies. Some of you know that we're going to talk a lot about Abram's kids, and some of them were famous for lies to get by. And here's where that came from. The fruit does not fall far from the tree. Abram is setting some definite patterns here that will continue to carry as we go. And we're introduced to this land of Egypt. We're introduced to this position, which is Pharaoh. And we see that God is using Abram, and despite all of his nervousness, all of his anxiety, perhaps his simple lack of faith because he's still new to this walk, God is truly blessing him anyway. Every time the faith man, be it Abram or be it Israel, leaves Egypt, he plunders Egypt. Every time. That is amazing. So how does that happen to you and I today? You see, sometimes we are in Egypt. We are often bred in Egypt. We come from a place of bondage. We've never known freedom. We grew up in it. We were so young when we entered that we don't remember what freedom actually feels like. And then we have this encounter with God, this revelation of Jesus, and we get free, because when the Son sets a person free, you're free indeed, right? How did we plunder Egypt? Do we do it? It's called testimony. When we plunder Egypt, you say, well, I'd much rather have a bunch of gold and perhaps some cattle that I could sell. No, testimony is worth more than all of that. When you can come out of Egypt and tell people, this is what the Lord set me free from, that gives you a weapon against the enemy that is unsurpassed. It is that weapon that makes you wealthy in the heavenlies. So don't be upset that we don't get servants and livestock, or maybe in our culture it would be just stock. We're after that testimony. And some of the ones with the most powerful testimony are those that spent the most time in Egypt. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, man. This is deep. It could preach for hours and hours and hours, just each little part of that. But we are going to continue on with our study of Abram next time. So I hope you have a blessed week, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.